All right. I think we're live. Hey, you guys. Welcome back. Before we get into it, since I don't think there's many people on here yet, I wanted to quickly talk about how I haven't been doing like my normal video format. I'm sure I've addressed this in another live, but I don't really remember. Um, I do plan on returning to that format, not completely like reintegrating it because I enjoy doing the lives. I feel like it's lower effort and it's cleaner. I mean, it's interesting. They're challenging in different ways. The other videos take more effort, commitment, and time. It's more time consuming, and this is a bit more natural, off the cuff, flowing. So I do plan on reintegrating that back in. And at this point in time, based on my living situation, the lives just make sense as of right now. So, hey, you guys, thank you all for watching. Um, so, I want to start off with just talking about the fact that I actually didn't know that I had a fear of commitment, which is kind of weird. Um, because I had heard people talk about it before, but ever since I was in high school and at a really young age, and commitment issues, fear of commitment doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, but I think that's the context in which most of us think of it as, so that's where I'm going to start. Um, so when I was younger, I had like this huge desire to be in a relationship. Like I really, really wanted to be in a relationship. But it seemed like I guess the people I would gravitate towards tended to be a bit more emotionally distant or hot and cold. And it's interesting because I didn't even realize until recently that I had what some may call commitment issues. Um, and you can see it like, because if it's unconscious, it's going to manifest differently than it would if you like know it, because then you'll be able to see your patterns as opposed to be like, oh, I really want to be in a relationship, but why am I not getting into relationships? Why am I always single? Why do I always end up liking the people who are like emotionally distant or avoidant? And it's because unconsciously we don't want that like really intense relationship. Where's the cat respectfully? She is in the litter box actually in this room. You can hear. Maybe you can hear. I don't know if you can. I can hear it. Anyways, oh shoot, commitment issues. Um, right. So if you find that you're going for people who tend to be more distant or hot and cold, not as consistent, it's likely because you fear the responsibility that comes with a relationship, or you don't know what it's like to be there. And before we get deeper into this, from my perspective, there are like two general types of like commitment issues or fears of commitment. One is when you've been very enmeshed with someone, whether it be your family or a romantic partner, and the relationship was so codependent and so intense where you had to sacrifice your true nature and who you were in order to maintain this relationship and this connection with this other person. So if slash when you get out of this relationship, when other opportunities for relationships come into your life, you fear the commitment that will in a sense require you to give up who you are once again. So in that kind of commitment, it's more of the fear of enmeshment, the fear of like putting your energy into something and not being able to escape, not being able to take a step back. The other type of commitment issues or fear of commitment okay, the other type of commitment issues or fear of commitment would be the fear of abandonment. So avoiding getting into a relationship because you feel like you'll be in a situation constantly where your needs aren't met, you're not seen, you're not heard, and then they can like leave you at any given moment. And it's interesting because that type of dynamic usually occurs from someone who is tended to experience more avoidant relationships. So it's interesting because the person who's been very enmeshed will tend to be more avoidant, and the person who's been more neglected will tend to be more of the like, oh, please love me, like the anxious attachment style. Also, real quick, yep, there's the cat. There she is. It's so interesting. This is totally off topic, but I'm just finding right now that me speaking, it's coming out like differently. Like, have you ever had those dreams where you're speaking, but you can't speak? It's like you're trying to get the words out, and it's just like I've been experiencing like little bits of that in real life, which has been so weird. And I think it must be tied to like some sort of block throat chakra thing, or like me not fully speaking my truth, even though I feel like I'm speaking my truth a lot. But oh my God, this is totally random. This is really off topic, but we'll get back on topic. I just think that this is coming to mind for a reason. So sometimes we think there's something wrong with us for like the emotions we feel. Oh, I feel really anxious for no reason. If this anxiety went away, then I could just do all the things like a good person is supposed to do and live my life. But it's interesting because that anxiety is there for a reason. And that anxiety is telling you like, hey, the way you're living your life isn't actually in alignment to like your soul signature. The way you're living your life isn't really in alignment to you and who you are. But it's interesting because then our mind will feel that emotion and assign different thoughts to it that in a way, like, I guess you could say like matches the frequency of that emotion. But the thoughts that are attached to this emotion isn't necessarily why the emotion is coming up, which is why a lot of spiritual teachers will say, feel your feelings. Because as you really feel into them, at least for me personally, you feel into them and just observe the thoughts, observe the feeling, and don't get sucked into what the mind is telling you it all means. That's when like the intuitive knowledge just comes through the emotion for you. And I mean, everybody deals with this differently. I'm a very emotional person, so I know that feeling into my feelings is what works for me. So yeah. I'm just gonna read some of the messages quick. Maybe it's because you're anxious about something else. Yeah, I mean, exactly. Sometimes our mind, as I said, likes to assign meaning to things. So if I'm really sad and if I just went through a breakup, my mind is going to assign the meaning to it that it's because I just got out of this relationship with this person. Even though the reason I'm sad may or may not 100% be correlated to that event, but my mind assigns that meaning to it because that's what currently makes sense to it. The mind is a tool to help you. The mind is a tool to help you navigate this world. And sometimes the programming is a little faulty. And that's like what we get to do is figure out, okay, this isn't exactly in alignment to me, or this isn't exactly the perspective that I want to sit in. So how can I change the way that my mind works to be in alignment to me as a whole, to like my soul or my higher self, or whatever you personally believe in. All right. So anyways, back to the fear of commitment. So, as I said, I didn't even know that I really had a fear of commitment until more recently. I would find that so I've been in like one like real relationship, and getting into that relationship took months upon months upon months. It took forever for us to hook up. But that situation to me, I was able to stay in it because I thought mentally that I didn't like being in that in between, but that in between was safe to me because if they left, then it's so confusing because consciously I felt like I was so ready to be in a committed relationship. Consciously, what I thought, I felt so like I was wanting to work towards this goal of like a really serious committed relationship. But if I look back at my behavior, I see that I was going for someone that was emotionally distant. I was going for a situation where I don't even know how to describe this. Just like I didn't have to truly be myself. And there was this halfway commitment where I got some of the benefits of commitment, but didn't have to take all the responsibility that a committed relationship would entail, I suppose. And in that relationship, it ended up being very enmeshed, very close, spending all of our time together. I didn't have many friendships outside of the relationship. And so when I left that relationship, I developed this huge fear of commitment, kind of unconsciously. And the only other situations I'd gotten involved in after that were also very much halfway commitment and never full commitment after that relationship. And outside of relationships, I've also seen this in my work where I was pursuing music and I was putting my all into my music until I started trying to go after it as a career. The moment I was like, oh, let's make this into something that I'm going to do for the rest of my life and actually started down that path, I lost all motivation to do it. And I think I've said this in a previous video, but when I started making YouTube videos and I started getting, more traction on my page, I got this pit in my stomach. At this point, I was more conscious. So when I got this pit in my stomach, I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I do fear success. Maybe I do fear like commitment, because fear of commitment and fear of success, not always, but for me personally, are very similar and very intertwined and really come down to a lot of the same beliefs. So what I really think that fear of commitment boils down to is, well, two things, as we talked about earlier. Fear of being trapped in a situation, fear of being trapped in a state where you have to take more responsibility than you feel like is in alignment to you, or responsibility that you feel like isn't yours to take. And the second thing is this fear of getting in this situation, succeeding, and having it all crumble before you. It's like a lot of times when someone fears success, it's because they fear having it all and then losing it all. And it's so interesting because then we enter this halfway point where it's basically, I guess, the same state of indecision, because within us, we're really, really conflicted. One part of us wants to succeed and wants to be in that relationship or wants to start making a lot of money. But then another part of us is scared of getting trapped in that relationship, of all the responsibility that will come from that new job. And so these two parts of us are fighting a battle, but usually the conscious mind tends to be the one that's like, no, I want that relationship. I want that job. And so you go for it. But then this unconscious aspect of you is like, but only go this far, because if you go further, then all the bad, scary things are going to happen. So it's important to be honest with yourself about all the things that you really do fear, and not to minimize how scary that is for you, even if you still want to go down that path. So for example, I found that with my YouTube channel, I know I can be making more content. I know I can be making more videos. I know that I can be successful at this, and I know that I can turn it into a way for me to make an income that can support me at this time in my life. I know that I'm capable of all these things, and I see that that is a potential timeline for me. And I want that timeline. I do. And there's also unconscious aspects of me that are terrified because, well, I don't necessarily hold all of the popular opinions or what some people would deem to be correct. And for me, a big fear is fear of judgment and fear of rejection. So if I'm putting myself out on this platform where a lot of people are going to be listening to what I'm saying, then I'm setting myself up for rejection and I'm setting myself up for judgment. And so there's a little bit of conflict and resistance within me. And really the best way to ease this resistance and to come into a state of acceptance is to ask that aspect of myself that's resisting the path that I'm currently forging for myself, what it needs and how this path doesn't meet those needs. So for example, for me, feeling like I have a secure foundation is very important. And with making content, for example, it's more of like an entrepreneur. My mouth is not speaking very well today. I mean, it is, but it's like, as I said, dream when you can't speak sometimes. Entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial. Okay. Going down the path of an entrepreneur is a bit risky, and it's not necessarily as consistent. So there's a lot of fear within myself. And I think for me personally, at least at this stage of my life, what I need to build to feel safe going down this path is feeling within myself like I have built a solid home within me where all aspects of myself feel safe, where all aspects of myself feel accepted by me as a whole. So, anyways, hold on. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee and my water. So really, commitment issues, from my perspective, for the most part, refers to, it's like signing a contract. When you agree to be in a relationship with someone, you're basically energetically signing a contract that you're, not always, but in mainstream society, that you're going to be exclusive to each other, that you're going to be emotionally available to each other, that you're going to offer each other love and support and care, that you will be able to send another person a call or a text without feeling judged, that you'll be able to talk about your emotions and feelings with that person, that that person will be by your side and take your needs as their own, in a sense, or into account. And what happens is, a lot of people don't really state what they actually need out of a relationship. And so they get into this relationship a bit with a false front. And then neither person feels like their needs are being met. Both people feel like they're being duped. And because today it's not necessarily the norm for people to be super honest about what they need, likely because they don't even know what they need when they go into a relationship, then when people get into situations and they realize that they've been duped, whether it was on purpose or an accident, or they realize that the relationship takes more than they thought, or the relationship wasn't as safe as they thought it would be, in the future, that person who wasn't able to be in that committed relationship, that person who felt unsafe or unsupported in that committed relationship is going to fear another situation like that. They're going to fear that they're going to replay the same thing over and over again. And so they're constantly going to find themselves in these positions where they want a relationship, but they're only allowing themselves to go halfway. They're only allowing themselves to kind of like dip their toes in the relationship because they fear that they will have to give up who they are. Excuse me. Or they fear that they won't be supported anyway, and that they will feel even more alone in that relationship than they would by themselves. The most random thing to enter the video on. Sometimes those commitments feel like a box. Exactly. It's like people feel like by committing to something, you feel trapped. So, for example, I was talking to someone about relationships and about commitment, and they said, I want to be in a relationship, but I also want to be free. I want to feel like I can be myself and do what I want. And I'm like, well, that's how you should feel. In a healthy relationship, you're not sacrificing who you are. In a relationship that's truly in alignment to you, your needs don't trample on the other person's needs. In a committed relationship where both people are being taken care of, you should feel more supported and free than you would by yourself. And I mean, of course, we all will make, I don't even want to say compromises, but I guess from one perspective, that's what it is. But you're going to operate differently when you're in a committed relationship, because not only are you looking after your own needs and taking care of yourself, you are also taking care of that other person, and that other person is also taking care of you. But in that relationship, there shouldn't be restriction and saying like, okay, I have to like chop off aspects of who I am in order to fit into a role that this person can accept me and love me. Because in that sense, you're assigning the meaning of love and relationship to sacrifice and losing yourself. And so when you get out of that relationship, it's going to be hard for you to trust that you're going to get into another relationship that feels safe to you as a whole. But the thing is, like, in today's world, I feel like the norm is for people to sacrifice themselves. And then over time, when people can't even like keep up that act anymore, there's a lot of tension or problems or contracts broken. And it's scary. I think, okay, there's probably other commitments that are like permanent, but I think outside of having children, outside of having kids, you can always change your mind. If you get married to someone, you can divorce them. There's going to be a lot of challenge down that path, I'm sure. But we sometimes see commitment as like, once I'm there, I'm stuck and I can't get out. When in reality, we can always leave. And we can always change course, and we can always make a different decision. It's so, like, this whole topic is so, like, I don't even want to say confusing, but I know I've already said this, but we really fear commitment because we fear losing ourselves. We fear either that we will feel neglected and left behind, in which case we have to adjust who we are to get as much attention as possible and maybe mute some aspects of us and really accentuate other aspects of us. Or we're in such an enmeshed relationship where in order to maintain positive connection, we have to let go of who we are to also fit into that relationship. So either way, there's a fear of losing yourself, a fear of being someone you're not and being something you're not, and then being stuck in that role in order to maintain that relationship. So I really quick want to talk about, I actually don't know if I want to talk about that. Because sometimes I want to speak about things going on in my life to best relate to you guys. Not just best relate to you guys, but so you guys can see what I'm talking about from another perspective. And then I realize that it may be something that I don't necessarily want people in my personal life to hear. How interesting. Because even then, it's like, that's even like a fear of commitment, right? Like me fearing like, if I say this, I can't take that back. Which in a way is important, because it's important to say what you mean and to protect yourself from those who may not necessarily have your best interests at heart. And from another perspective, it's like, that's me in a sense not being fully authentic, and we're like hiding this aspect of myself to best represent myself to the people in my life and to the people who support me. But basically, long story short, I'm taking a summer class at a community college, and for the past year, I've been out of school. I've taken some time off, and I've been really, really conflicted on whether or not I want to go back to college. But based on I grew up in a family where it wasn't like you have to go to college, but more in the sense that it was just like, oh, you're going to go to college. Like, duh, like you're smart. You're able to without... Anyways, I have support where I can afford to go to college. So there's no reason for me not to go. But at one place, I'm kind of like, I don't really want to. And one thing that I've been navigating now is it that I don't want to go because I'm fearing the commitment that comes with college, that comes with doing all of this work, that comes with putting my time into something that on one hand can be rewarding and on the other hand maybe isn't like, maybe it's not necessarily like worth the amount of energy I put into it to get a piece of paper that tells me that I graduated from something. Anyways, my point is, I've been conflicted on whether my resistance to going back to college full time is because of the fact that I'm fearing the commitment of college, or if it's because of the fact that that's actually aligned to me at this point in time and I should be allocating my energy elsewhere currently. And I think the best way to really find this answer, because this type of phenomena or struggle or obstacle or whatever you want to call it can refer to relationships, can refer to work, can refer to school, can refer to whatever you think it is or whatever is going on in your life. The mind is going to try all it can to find the right answer for you. The only way to really know is to follow your heart, because there are opportunities that you will reject, or I'll speak for myself. There have been opportunities that I have rejected or let go of because spiritually, and from the knowledge that I learned and programmed into my mind, I thought it made sense for me to let go of certain commitments. And now I'm coming back to a place where I'm seeing that whether or not that decision was actually right for me, I didn't make that decision from my heart. I made that decision from my mind. Okay, if I don't let go of this job, for example, then I'm not going to be able to have a better job come into my life. So I let go of the job, and then I'm like, why isn't a new job popping up? Well, did I make that decision from a place of alignment? Or was I like, oh, what's in alignment to me based on what other spiritual teachers have told me is to let go of this job, so I'm going to do it. But did that really come from your heart? Did that really come from the essence of your being? Or did that come from a place of, oh no, if I don't do this, then my life is never going to change. Oh no, if I don't let go of this relationship, then I'm never going to meet the love of my life. But the real question I guess it's hard for me to say, like, to ask yourself, because then your mind is going to try to come up with an answer, right? And our minds are incredible in the sense that they can see things from any perspective, and it's up to us to figure out what perspective is in alignment to us, right? What do you have the most to learn from? What is going to help you grow? So, for example, there was a video I watched by Jenna Marbles, and oh my God, I love Jenna Marbles so much. I could literally cry right now if I think about it too much, because I'm really sad that she left YouTube. But my point is, she made some videos on some of her birthdays a few years ago, and one of the things that she said that really stuck with me was, sometimes we enter into a relationship and we know it's not necessarily good for us, or the relationship we want to end up in or end up on. And so she was telling the story how she was with this guy and she was really conflicted, talking to one of her friends, like, oh, I feel like I should break up with him. Like, I feel like he's not right for me, but like, I just, like, my heart feels like I want to stay, but that doesn't make any sense. And then her friend said, like, something along the lines of, that's not how your heart works. Like, sometimes we know something rationally, but that's not how our heart works. And sometimes you follow your heart and you get hurt and you fall on your face and you end up in the fucking mud. But at the end of the day, that relationship, however long it lasts, can teach you a lot about yourself and can teach you a lot about love and life and what it means to, like, take another person as your own. Like, as yourself. Like, taking care of their needs as if they're your own. I hope that came across. Now it did. And I think what really stuck with me about that is, you know, obviously it's hard because sometimes we get really attached to a specific person and we keep on chasing them, but really what's happening is we're chasing this idea. Some people think that's following their heart. I'm sure in some cases there's a similar energy going on where that is aligned to that person, or that is what's going on in their life. Sorry, my friend is calling me and I got distracted. Hold on, I need to hang up. Forgot what I was saying. what is going on in their life. I know that was the last thing I said. How to be a vampire 101. Your content needs to reach more people. I love you. Thank you. I would finish college. You can look back and say you finished that commitment. You can also balance YouTube with that. At the end of college, you'll know which one was worth putting more energy into. Yeah, I agree with that. And at the same time, I can not go now and I can go when I'm 30, which would be a less traditional path. But at the same time, it's really like, that's the point. I need to follow my heart, but right now, on both sides of the argument, my mind and my fear and my beliefs are getting too entangled in that. So I think this will tie back to what I was just talking about. But our mind, as I said, likes to make the decision for us. And our mind is, in a way, influenced by the beliefs we hold, the frequency in which we reside at. And if we're holding on to beliefs that no longer serve us, our mind is going to be whipped around from place to place, and it's going to be hard for us to really, what's the word? Oh my God. It's not decipher, discern. Okay. It's going to be hard for us to discern whether or not what answers in alignment to us, because the messages coming through for why we would make each decision, both are coming from a place of disalignment. Does that make sense? So, as we, in a way, clear our mind and work with these old belief systems and transmute them, shift them into something that better serves us based on where we are in our lives right now, or what, I guess, consciousness you're at, then it will be easier for you to see what is in alignment with you. So, hold on, I want to read some of the messages. Oh. Yeah, it's because the dark triad is made from yelling at your kids in harsh voices. Oh, I have not heard that. Just joined something along the lines of, you think you are following your heart, but chasing an idea. Right. That was a minute ago, so thank you. Right. Our mind is so good at convincing us that our truth is something that it's not. And it's not because our mind is like this evil villain trying to trick us and trying to send us down the wrong path. It's because our mind, in a sense, is a separate consciousness than our heart is. Our mind is a separate consciousness than, like, I don't know, like the feelings that you experience in your body. And that doesn't always mean the feelings you experience in your body are always right and the mind is always wrong. But it's that sometimes the mind is confused. You know, like if there's a kid, for example, who has bad breath because they have like tonsillitis, and a parent tells them, oh, just brush your teeth and it will go away. Then the kid's brushing their teeth and like, oh no, why isn't it going away? It's not that the parent was bad or trying to harm the child, but it's like the parent was trying to help them with their problem, and the child was just listening to the parent instead of seeing like, okay, if this doesn't work, then maybe my parent isn't right and let's find like another answer. Let's look for something else because this isn't working out for me. The mind is a tool. The mind is not the end all be all. And when we get so caught up in the idea that it is, we end up limiting ourselves. So let's say, for example, you're on the spiritual path. You're on the spiritual path. You've gone through an awakening that's like changed your life, and most of your friends are not people who are super conscious. Your family isn't super conscious. And so you decide that the best thing for you to do is to, I don't know, move to a highly spiritual place, join meditation groups and yoga studios, and completely enter this completely new life because you want people that are in alignment to you and your frequency. You think it's because intuitively you think you want to be around people like you, because then together you all raise each other's vibration and you all reach a higher state of consciousness because you're all on the same path. But what's happening is, from one perspective, this is just something that I've been learning personally. You are severing off the people that were in alignment to your old self. When you go through an awakening, your old self doesn't just disappear. There is now a clear path to this new you, which is really a you that's more in alignment to your heart, your soul, your body, you as a whole. Instead of this character that you've embodied to stay safe in your family structure and in your society. So, dang it. I'm losing it. Soul signature, in alignment. Right. So our mind tells us that we have to go to this new place with these meditation studios and everything in order to be in alignment, because spirituality is the thing. But all of these people in your life who were aligned to your old self, to the ego you had before your awakening, they are all matches to aspects of your unconscious self. Aspects that may be, in a sense, holding you back. So, yes, some of your relationships will naturally fall off because you are shedding some of those layers. And so as you shed certain layers of who you are, some people will naturally fall away. But if there's people, if at any point in time there's a gravitational pull between you guys, there's a reason for that. Whether that reason is positive or negative for your personal journey is not something your mind is going to be able to decipher or discern. That is something that your heart will know. And sometimes we have to go through these less positive experiences to reap the most positive outcome. Because perhaps the universe is bringing this person into your life over and over again because of the fact that they represent something that you need to address, you need to accept, you need to integrate. But your mind is telling you, no, this person isn't woke the way I'm woke. Therefore, I need to cut them out of my life. Therefore, I'm leaving it because I fear that committing to this frequency in any sense is going to lower my level of consciousness, is going to lower my vibration. And from one standpoint, that very well may be true, that you feel more like your old self, but maybe you need to play a little more in that frequency from a conscious standpoint to really know that's not for you. Because what's happening is right now, as I talked about in a previous video, you're going into this new place, in this new state, because your mind is telling you this is what's aligned to me. But you existing at this state is not stable. It's not secure. It's laying on this, I don't even want to say logical fallacy, like a vibrational fallacy, a spiritual fallacy, a fallacy of your belief system. And you have this false idea of where you are or who you're supposed to be. And this air bubble is going to collapse, and suddenly you're going to be at this state with all these spiritual people. You're going to fall in frequency, and then think about the fact like, oh, like, why do I feel like so behind? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough to be here? So if you, by the mind, went into this place of where you think you're supposed to go based on what logically makes sense, and fooling yourself into believing that's your heart, when really your heart is telling you, hey, continue to explore the frequency of the people you were with as your old self, learn to love and accept them as they are, and the answer will come to you as to whether or not they're supposed to continue to be in your life. Because as you shed layers of yourself, the people that are not into alignment with you will shed away. There won't be this gravitational pull between you anymore. The decision from an outside perspective of what's in alignment to you may not be what you think it is. So the more you listen to your heart, the more you will be able to grow at the fastest pace. So when I went to Delaware, it was an intuitive decision, and a lot of the decision I did make was informed by the mind. I don't regret going out there. I don't regret spending that time in complete isolation, because I feel like I learned a lot about myself. But when I came back here, I had a lot of resistance to coming back here because I knew I was going to be around the same people that I was really close with before I went through my spiritual awakening. And when I came back here, I was really surprised to find that I was able to connect with people differently, because I was still seeing myself as separate. I was seeing myself as, I'm awakened, you're not awakened. Instead of saying, okay, everything is gray area. I have aspects that I'm unconscious of. You have aspects that you're unconscious of. I see you as an unconscious aspect of myself. So regardless of where you're at in your journey, I can learn from my relationship with you. And if it doesn't intuitively feel right, then it will shed away, because I am in flow, because I am in acceptance of whatever happens. And honestly, there are moments where I go into disalignment, and then I have to readjust and come back into my home, I guess you could say, myself. But don't let what everyone else in the spiritual community tells you to do, because it's not always right. I know what's right for me, and from another perspective I don't, because my mind can fool me, right? Which is just illusion. But nobody can know what's right for me better than I do, right? And that's the same for you. So all the information I say is just a perspective of the truth. It's just a perspective of the truth. In reality, I don't know shit. Nobody knows shit. But by making these videos, I'm offering you the perspectives that have helped me gain more sovereignty over myself, feel more comfortable in my skin, feel happier living every day, and considering other options and viewpoints, because most of the spiritual teachers and self-help teachers I see out there, there's still a lot of duality and a lot of good and bad. And that's something that I want to shift that, because, for example, I'm really going off topic, but I don't care. I love this. A lot of people will look at the person who's in a victim mindset and be like, oh, that's bad. That's out of alignment. But what if that soul or that consciousness specifically came into that life specifically to explore that consciousness and experience what it's like to feel like a victim to everything. Because from that perspective, they are a victim to everything. From their level of consciousness, that experience is true. And so God in some form incarnated to fully explore that frequency. And as a human, you may look at that and say, well, that's bad and that hurts the people around them, which is very well true. Because in a sense, it's like by embodying the energy of a victim, you contaminate other people's energy and then they feel like a victim to you and whatever. And if that does not positively affect your energy, if that energy doesn't feel in alignment to you, then don't associate yourself with that frequency. Don't associate with people who are residing in that consciousness. But in a way, it's like, who are we to judge that frequency and consciousness? I mean, other than like from a human standpoint of, okay, this isn't good for me. And even then, if you do want to judge it, why is that bad? But we don't have to judge it. In a way, we get to choose. I just thought that was interesting because I've been thinking about that more and more recently, and it's helped me accept people regardless of where they're residing at consciously, because not everyone is here to go through the same work and awakening that you're going through. So, anyways, good face to see. Thank you. Any tips on how one can stop comparing themselves? Really, comparing yourself is just about trying to feel like... It's funny because usually when we compare ourselves, we feel worse. But when we compare ourselves and feel worse, it's because we're also comparing ourselves in a sense where we feel better. So we've learned that by comparing ourselves, we're able to get these little immediate like hits of, I don't even know if it's dopamine, but like hits of good feeling emotion. Like if you see someone on TV and you're like, oh, I'm prettier than her, like, and then you feel good about yourself. Like if she can be on this reality show with all these hot people, then like, and I'm hotter than her, then like, that makes me feel hot. That makes me feel attractive. That makes me feel like there's something good about me. And then on the other hand, because you're in this comparison mode, in this idea of hierarchy, you will be looking at another person who you perceive as more attractive than you and think, fuck, I'm not as pretty as her. Like, who wants me when there's this in the world, right? And then you feel like you're worthless. So it ties down to this belief that there is hierarchy. When you accept yourself as you are, and you let go of this idea of someone's better for doing one thing, really comparing yourself is all about polarity. There's good and bad. There's above and below. And being above is better than being below. Then we, within ourselves, are always going to try to be figuring out where we stand on that scale. Because since we perceive the world through this idea of hierarchy, our ego is going to want to find a way to make us as high as possible. And so it's going to point out where we feel inferior so that we feel superior again. Inferiority and superiority are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. So the key is to come into this middle ground and say, regardless of if I'm taller or shorter than someone, regardless of if I'm a better or worse student than someone, our worth, our inherent worth is equal, because I do not perceive the world through the lens of hierarchy. So really, it's about adjusting an entire way that you look at the world, an entire way that you think about other people and yourself. And this is not to say, like, don't have preferences. Like, for example, you can say, like, oh, I'm a dog person, so I prefer dogs. But you don't believe dogs are actually better than cats. You don't believe, oh, like a dog is inherently more worthy than a cat. You just have a preference towards that animal based on your experience or based on like your energy, because that energy is typically a better match to you. Yeah. I mean, there's so much more to it, and I'm sure I can get into like more like perspectives on it, but for me personally, the more you accept yourself as you are, and the more you accept other people as they are, the less you'll be comparing yourself, because you will just see the world in terms of, I prefer X but that doesn't mean Y isn't as good as X. It just means that X is more aligned to me in this now moment. Right? All right. I think you know what's right because you made the decision. That's powerful. Thank you. If there is inferiority complex, there's also superiority complex too. Exactly. I completely believe that. Being the definer of hierarchy itself gives a sense of safety and orientation. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I think that's why our world has operated on it for so long, because it makes people like, there's a structure, you know your place, and yeah. Same thing about experience. Maybe in some lives we experience being more attractive, and others we experience being less attractive in order to learn to love ourselves and others anyway. Yeah, exactly. I believe we come into like these lives to experience what it's like to be human or to reside in a certain state of consciousness. Like there's probably lives where we've been, from society standards, like terrible, abusive people. And really, it's like we're exploring that consciousness no matter how, like, I don't know. It's hard because, like, is that aligned to someone? I mean, it must be, because would it exist otherwise? I mean, no, I could just talk about this stuff forever. Like, I don't even know. But yeah, we experience different states of consciousness to appreciate the whole thing as a whole. Like, if there was a superhero movie and if there wasn't a villain in that movie, then the story would have no plot. The hero would never grow. The hero would never be challenged. Their powers would never reach their full potential. And I believe, in a sense, it's like, just like that movie, all the characters are written by like the same person or people. Like it's the same with our lives. Like our lives, in a sense, are like video games or movies. And if we think about it from that standpoint, the antagonist, as like awful as they may be, is an essential character to our growth. Every negative experience is what thrusts us into movement and thrusts us into growth and expansion. And I mean, that's the way I see it. And if you don't see it that way, then that's also acceptable. You know, you get to choose how you see it, basically. But I like that you said that, Mia or Maya. I'm not quite sure how you'd pronounce that. I'm a cat person, LOL. She's on my channel performing tricks. Oh, that's awesome. It's so hard to shed that hierarchy thinking. It is, and it takes time too, because you're not going to shed it all at once. It's going to be a process. So, for example, like, if I am, let's say I start with saying like, okay, regardless of like, let's say I have a belief that like, I don't know, certain races are better than other races. And I start with, okay, I see that like everyone's equal, but then there's another layer of like culture. Oh, I actually find that I'm judging people who have a different accent than me or a non-English speaking accent. And then you cross paths with more people who have that language barrier, so you learn to love and accept them regardless of the fact that they speak differently than you, or that you may have some trouble understanding them. So there's layers to this. It's not going to happen all at once. And so it's also about being okay with the fact of like, okay, I still perceive the world through the lens of hierarchy, and like I'm working on that, and like it's not going to happen overnight. Like you can't plant the seed and expect to eat the fruit the same day. It takes time and it takes effort. And, you know, I think like you'll find like little traces in the future, and instead of being like, oh no, I'm still judging, you're going to be like, you're just going to laugh and be like, oh my God, there you are. Like that's still here. Like there's like a little, like, some residue left over, and you're just going to smile. Like so many times nowadays, like when I find myself like judging someone or getting mad at someone for what they're saying, I laugh at myself. I'm just like, oh, that's so funny that I'm still judging that. And then I continue to move on, because in that moment, in that laughing moment, not only am I accepting that other person saying like, how silly, but I'm almost like accepting myself. I'm saying like, how funny, I'm still judging, instead of being like, I'm bad for judging, which is just judging yourself for judging. You know what I mean? That was an amazing explanation of comparison. Thank you. I haven't been able to shower in almost 8 weeks now because I feel like somebody will go without if I do, and also includes me caring about myself. I do love and trust being me in life. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion personally, I think how we like take care of ourselves is a like reflection of how we're treating ourselves emotionally as well. And so if you're like sacrificing your health, for example, for the sake of other people, that shows how like in a way you're not being your full self necessarily. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but yeah. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna read this last comment. And we're gonna wrap up. What's your views on nature versus nurture then? Like, do you think some of society's villains still have been bad if they were born into another body and place? Honestly, my ideas on nature and nurture have just constantly been changing because I think I first went through my awakening and seeing like, oh, all of the ways I am is based on like how I grew up and like the role I had in my family, but also seeing that like my nature also influenced the role that I ended up embodying to stay safe. Like, for example, if I'm very sensitive and very attuned to other people's needs, then, and I was also the oldest sibling with 2 siblings who were like constantly fighting, me becoming the people pleaser, that's not who I am, but that role made sense based on my nature and my nurture. So I wouldn't even say it's an exact 50-50 because I'm sure for some people, based on like whatever, one may be influencing them more than the other. But I think that really it's both. It's both. They're in a way like 2 sides of the same coin. Like I don't believe we all come into this life as like a blank slate. Like I believe we have some sort of like template. So if you're interested in like the nature aspect of it, I'd really suggest looking into human design. It is confusing and it is like complicated, but like I remember looking into astrology and thinking like, like yes, I resonate with a lot of it, but like kind of like I get it, but also it's like it's general to the point where like it could just be like general enough to relate to anybody, right? But then when I started looking into human design, it's so specific, not only with like the way you are, but like what you can do today to be more in alignment to yourself. And honestly, like when you're on the spiritual path, you go through like multiple like awakenings that kind of like boost you forward. And looking deeper into human design for me was like another awakening to better understanding myself. So regardless of whether or not like that does or doesn't resonate with you, I think there are ways to find your nature in a sense. Because I think in a sense what it's about is like you nurture yourself, you nurture your mind into being a tool that helps you better come into alignment with your heart. You create an automatic system that helps you live your life in the most optimal, in alignment form. And then you live from here, right? I hope that makes sense. But I think what you said about villains is really interesting, in another body, in another place. I mean, perhaps like they would not have embodied that same role, because I believe like from my perspective I would say that it would be nurture over nature, but then like where did that nurturing start? It started with some consciousness because like nurture is just something that's passed down, ideas and beliefs. And so if those beliefs exist, it's because there's a consciousness that resides at that place. And I believe that everything is source. I believe like, if there is like God and the devil, that the devil is also God. Because it's the same thing. It's 2 sides of the same coin. That's the way I look at it personally. So, Yeah, you're making sense. LOL. I'm glad. Where do babies come from? You can look that up somewhere else. Nature or nurture. You generally have the choice to do the right thing, TBH, except things that are out of your control. Yeah, very intriguing. I found personality types and cognitive functions related to me more than star signs. Yeah, I feel that. All right. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this live. I do plan on doing more of my old style videos. Honestly, I probably won't do a lot of them over the next couple of months just because my house is a bit crowded, but we will see. We will see. I'm not committing to anything, which is ironic because this video is all about commitment. Kind of. It kind of started that way. Thank you for this video. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Thank you for being here.